Welcome to the Noyo Center for Marine Science Science Talk. I'm Sheila Siemens, the director of the Noyo Center. Thank you for spending your evening with us. This is a super fun evening that we're going to have tonight. It's a very special science talk for us, but I'll explain that in a minute. Just as a little background while we're waiting for people to come in. So Nathaniel is one of these amazing guys. I don't know how many of you know him, but he joined the Noyo crew at 12 when he first came to our camps as a young boy, and is now in college. And during COVID, instead of sitting around feeling sorry for himself like so many of us did, he decided to make the good use of his time and take a scientific writing class, and then approached me with the idea of writing this paper for the Noyo Center to help bring up our science credibility a little bit, which is amazing. And I admit that now that I was like, well, we'll see. But I don't know why I would ever think that, because of course, of all kids, Nathaniel's the one that can pull this off. With much trial and tribulation with some of the internal reviewers, we not persevered and got this paper published in the Frontiers of Ecology and the Environment, and we're super proud of it. In fact, Michael, can you get the link into the chat so people can link to the paper directly?
Yes.
So what we asked Nat to do today is he was also accepted to give a talk on this paper at a conference in Canada coming up, run by the Ecological Society of America. And so he has only 10 minutes for his time. And since he hasn't done too many of these before, and he tends to fall on the shy side, I said, just why don't you do a science talk with us? And you will have a great group of people that will give you feedback and are eager to hear what you have to say. And so I think what we want to help, so Nat will be talking to a bunch of people that are from the science community, but it's also good to really know, from the lay people community, also what parts didn't really make sense, because we're in this world, especially the tech world, we're in this world all the time, and getting to know where there's jargon or where you need a little bit more explanation. I want to open it up after after Nat is done, and you can raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can ask questions or give feedback. And we're super supportive of everything Nat's doing, and I think you're going to love all he has to say. With that, I would like to introduce Nathaniel Mills, coming to you from Portland, where he's attending Reed College. We bring this to you free of charge, but if there was ever a time to support the Noyo Center, now is it. I hope you know that we're trying to open the Slacktide Cafe and our new kind of research facility. It's going to be the Slacktide Cafe as a way to support the research that we'd like to do in Noyo Harbor, and that building is taking quite a while to open up, and that's partly because of COVID and partly because of bureaucracy. But it's going to be spectacular, and we hope that we will have you all down there at some point for some coffee. But this is a heavy lift for our organization, so a great time to support our organization with donations and or a little bit of money for the talk. So thank you so much. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to the man of the hour, Nathaniel Mills, to give his presentation.
Thank you very much. 3D technology is changing how we interact with marine mammal specimens. I'm Nathaniel Mills, a college junior who worked with the Noyo Center on articulating and restoring a blue and orca whale skeleton. I am here to talk to you about the benefits of 3D technology in marine science. And I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. I'm going to tell you a tale of two whales. So what is 3D technology? It is an umbrella term for scanning, as in taking an object and transporting it from in-person into digital space, and also 3D printing, which can speak for itself. It is a new idea in marine science. Therefore, the potentials whether it be practical, creative, or educational, have not all been realized yet. That makes it a fertile ground. And one example we'll come back to repeatedly is that of community science. This is because technologies get cheaper as they become more common, allowing individuals and organizations with tight budgets to participate in active fieldwork. Our examples today being that of our blue and orca whales. And our first case study is the blue whale who washed ashore in 2009, and she passed when she got a strip strike to her spine. A community forum, a group of community volunteers recovered her, lifted her up a 15-meter cliff for later restoration, since when she washed up, her skull was caught in between rocks and damaged. With help from a specialized lab at Idaho State, we used 3D technology to deconstruct and then reconstruct her damaged skull, as you can see in the right-hand image. And then later, we were able to assemble her skeleton in its entirety in 3D space, which you can now view for free online. On the left, we have a human and the blue whale for a size comparison. And on the right, we have the community volunteers at work. Our second case study was the orca whale who washed ashore in 2015. And like the blue whale, he got plenty of love from a community group to collect him and prepare him for restoration and articulation. Although what's different is the amount of love he got on the 3D end of things, and that we were able to use 3D technology to put him together both in person and in 3D space with help from the Marine Mammal Center in the Bay Area, as well as the California Academy of Sciences and Humboldt State. And the first example of this technology with regards to the orca whale are the flippers, which have a large amount of cartilage. You can see on the right-hand side, there aren't any bones in between to tell us where each flipper bone should be in relation to one another. So we hired a local surgeon to take multiple X-ray scans and stitch it together as a master reference, so that when it came time to articulate and assemble the flippers, the experts knew exactly where each bone should be placed in relation to one another, as you can see on the bottom left. And the second example involved the teeth. And the teeth are funny in that they actually crack if they're not constantly submerged in salt water. And the natural thought is, why not use plaster casting? But we already have 3D, so why not implement it here? In the top center, you can see our setup, which involves a turntable with a specimen placed on top and a 3D scanner looking overhead. And what we would do is that we would rotate each specimen about the turntable to capture a 360-degree perspective of the specimen. You can see on the bottom hand, there's a summation of each perspective on the right hand, totaling up to be a complete 3D replica. On the right hand image, you can see two orca teeth. The one on the left is a real orca tooth, and the one on the right is a 3D printed replica. And these 3D printed replicas are what ended up getting installed into the orca's jaw itself. So why is 3D important? Given the past examples, they're valuable for restoration efforts, like the natural damage to the blue whale, or even replicating more sensitive specimens such as the teeth. Another example actually involves the blue whale. There was one bone missing, but we knew that the missing bone was identical to one we already had. So we took that bone in 3D space and we simply mirrored it so we could have the two bones necessary again. There are also practical benefits. Again, as these kinds of technologies get cheaper, they become more accessible to more people. For instance, the Noyo Center, which doesn't have a Stanford level budget. And as this technology becomes more common, it'll be relevant in other fields. So it's also a valuable teaching tool for future generations. And I can attest, as a former student of these processes. So what is the future? Of course, technology, these kinds of technologies get cheaper all the time. But also when we think about digital files, it's not hard to imagine, say, a fragile or valuable specimen that you can share with a Google Drive link instead of having to deal with the logistics of either traveling to the specimen or having to transport the specimen. And another frontier is that of online or printed displays with the help of either augmented reality, as in having an object with digital assets seen in it, like a heads-up display, or virtual reality, where you see completely different space with goggles on. And my favorite example of this actually involves the blue whale. And my co-authors and I talk about two possible uses of a digitized specimen as an online model. The first being to use the blue whale skeleton as a literal and figurative skeleton to teach anatomy with the help of VR or VR, virtual reality, or augmented reality, or AR. We could show musculature or the nervous system, either for research or teaching purposes. And the other example, with the help of either software engines or computer animation, would be to recreate the shipstrike episode that caused this blue whale to die. Again, using the skeleton as a basis for recreating that episode. I want to thank two of my co-authors who are here today, Sarah and Sheila, for believing in me and going the full distance, as well as members of my family. I know my aunt, her boyfriend are here, as well as my parents. I want to thank you all for your support. And finally, to you, I want to thank you for coming. You can read our full paper for free online at the link in the slides or in the chat, and you can contact either me or the Noyo Center at the links below. I hope you found this useful and worth sharing with those you know.
Excellent. Yeah, go back to that video, the animation of the blue whale, and show people where that ship strike is who aren't familiar with this skeleton as we are. So this is the reconstructed skeleton that he showed you blown up. So the digital articulators were able to put it together. And that's where this whale came up under the boat, and the propellers cut her spinal cord, which we actually think might be something similar that happened to our sperm whale recently. So that's a really interesting difference between what we typically think of as a ship strike, where a boat hits a whale, in the center, and sort of, you see those iconic pictures of the whales coming in on the bow of boats. So there was a lot to learn about why this whale, was this just dumb luck, or did this whale surface, that way? So there's a lot to understand, and it will be interesting when we get this skeleton in the digital space, how much more we'll have opinions about this very thing, and also about the skeleton itself. So I want to open it. I have a lot of things to say, but I want to open it up to you folks before any of us say anything. And you can ask Nat your questions yourself. So somebody said, I believe the ship was doing bottom characterization near shore, may have been a NOAA chartered private vessel. It was exactly that. It was a NOAA chartered contractor doing seafloor mapping with a type of sonar that's the same as on all boats with fish finders. So that was not ruled a cause affecting the actual, the boat was going very slow, and it was very close to shore, not a place we would typically see blue whales. So there's a lot of speculation about what was happening at that time. A number of other whales came in at the same time during that year. And so there's been a lot of conversation in the science community about what was going on. Paul, you have a hand up. You want to unmute yourself and give your question?
Yes, thank you. That was a great presentation, Nathaniel. I'm impressed. And I don't know if I met you. I haven't been out there since, I guess it was 2012 or 2013.
Oh, wow.
You guys have, I'm very impressed, Sheila and Sarah and all of how much progress you. Super, that's really cool. And I agree with Nathaniel saying how the technology becomes used more often. This 3D imaging and reconstruction becoming cheaper. And I know you guys there at Neuro Center interact with other institutions, and I'm curious if you could tell me in your radar screen what other institutions have scanned their blue whale skeletons across the continent and across the world. Do you guys know?
Do you want me to take that, Nat?
Go ahead.
So we were able to get our blue whale skeleton scanned because they needed a blue whale skeleton. So Idaho Virtualization Lab has an NSF grant to create basically a digital library of all the whales of the world, including ones that no longer exist. And so they came and looked at ours and said, oh my gosh, that's an excellent specimen, not articulated, in good shape. So they came out and within and the difference between, Paul, when you and I were first you came out and I was first contacting folks about doing this, and the technology improvements 10 years later was night and day. They were done in 2 weeks. It was so fast. And as far as those guys knew, there was only 2 other fully digitally articulated skeletons. Now our articulators that we've worked with just finished an actual articulation of a blue whale in Australia. And that one, they actually, and this is what we're going to do with our skeleton now for optimizing its positioning in our new building, is they actually related each bone to each other so they could work on poses. So when they moved one part, it moved the whole skeleton accordingly, like it would in life. So there's a complicated way that they can create that model, so it's not just a rigid fixed thing you roll around like Nathaniel was doing, but you can actually move its head and see how it relates to each other. So that'll be a cool thing we're going to do probably in the next year. And then we can look at how to optimize the position in the building that we're going to build, but also what's the structural requirements for each point at which we want to hang this thing and make sure that we're building a building that will keep it safe and secure. So a lot has changed since we first looked at this, and there's not many that are digitally articulated like this. So this whale is now publicly available through the website that's part of this polar project that the virtualization lab is doing. So anybody can see our whale now, which is also really great.
Can I do a follow-up question?
Sure.
I know when I was out there, I was weighing bones, and we put together a spreadsheet, but I wasn't able to get weights on the skull, the mandibles, the different components of the skull. Have you guys all those different components of the skull? Do you have a data set that's available to the public for those weights?
No, we haven't really done the weights on each of the individual pieces yet. And in fact, it was pretty exciting to see them put it together like that, the skull, because we have never done that. So the reconstruction of the skull virtually was the first time we've ever seen the skull. And you can really see how much of it kind of ground down on the rocks when it was rolling around in the cove. Like one mandible is quite a bit shorter than the other one because it was grinding on the rocks. So yeah, we definitely still have work to do.
Well, maybe we can talk later. I've been working with people up in Newfoundland and Ontario, Canada, some people in Oregon, and then some people the eastern part up in New England, and getting weights on multiple blue whale skeletons. And I'd like to talk to you about getting some weights on your the Noyo skeleton before it gets articulated, so we can add to the data set. I think
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to let Annette ask her question now, so we can keep going. Thanks, Paul. We'll talk later.
Hi, Nat. That's a great presentation. You're doing Reed College proud tonight, and I'm anticipating that you're using this to tee up your senior thesis. So I'll throw you a good senior thesis question, which is kind of the research value here of your work. And it could be, one research question could be, what do we learn using this technology about these two whales that we wouldn't learn otherwise? It could be anatomy, it could be whatever. And then, typically with cases, you get to do a case comparison. And I was kind of curious, what are you learning in terms of looking across species or types of whales? And then how are you going to use this to, what are you going to explore for your senior thesis? If you are going to take this further, what's the next steps?
I think there are at least two questions in there. I think the first one, I actually think Sheila might know more about that than me, as in comparison of species.
Oh, well, why don't you answer your question, and then because I've been talking a lot, and then I will talk a little bit.
Sure.
Plus, are you presenting by yourself?
I will be by myself. Yeah.
You have to field all of these questions.
Indeed. Well, in that case, the thing is that Sheila is here, so I don't have to direct other people right away. With the other part of your question, I actually don't know what I'm doing for thesis yet, because I have a qualifying exam first.
Right.
So that's a little too far thinking.
This isn't even your field, right?
It's not my field either. I'm also an economics major. I'm not a biology major. I'm an imposter, basically. Yeah.
Well, so from just real briefly, because this is I want Nat to be able to talk more from the research side. I think there's a lot of, like he said, in democratizing science and getting our specimen out there, getting more, like what Paul was talking about, even getting our whale sort of in the hands of more researchers. I think there's a lot that, at least initially, that people will learn from looking at the digital skeleton, and maybe then they come out and look at the real thing. It brings us a lot of collaborative work and recognition for the work we're doing. So that's exciting. But I think one of the things that's really cool about what Nat has sort of brought out here is the importance of the community aspect of the community education aspect of what we've done. Like, so we've taken, as an organization in a small town with no universities, we managed to collect a 70-ton blue whale and bring it up a 40-foot cliff when there was no Noyo Center. So it's like a lot of the people that became the Noyo Center worked on that, but there was no Noyo Center then. And yet we managed to pull off this amazing feat and continue to do so. And now, as the Noyo Center has developed, we've had these other whales, and we've really gotten to experience the difference of having a really solid organization with a credible reputation and how much more we can do. And we bring students into every aspect of what we do. And so we articulated that Orca skeleton in a community forum with students like Nat and others. So it's this incredibly rich educational experience for them, but we also had it open to the public all the time, and we had docents walking people through so the public could come in and see what was happening and also get that really unique education of being up close and personal to these animals that are so elusive like that. So we work with a science advisor that's been studying killer whales for 30 years, and that's the second one he's ever been able to sort of do a necropsy on and touch, right? So that and the sperm whale that we just did was similarly, as a blue whale is, they're elusive to us mostly. So I think there's a lot of potential in at least improving increasing the amount of exposure people have to these skeletons. All right, Evan, proud father, you go next.
Oh, I'm kvelling, as they say, but great talk, Nat. Very concise.
Thank you.
Well done. So I had a couple of questions. One I was going to direct to Sheila, but I'm not going to spare you, Nat. I'm going to direct it to you.
Sure.
So one of the many, everyone here has just seen the tip of the iceberg tonight. There have been other 3D technology things that you've worked on, and one of them is this dome that you worked with others to build the computers to drive these very high power 4D 8 cameras or something that do a 360 view presentation. And the thought is, Sheila, as you mentioned, right, this is a community-based institution. It's like any institution, it's got funding issues, it's got questions of the vision in the future. So the question, just to play with, just to be playful, is thinking about how can the Noyo Center leverage this for the future. And one thing is that people obviously love shows, right? They love to go to shows, and you've created, and to buy tickets for shows. And Noyo's built this beautiful dome that people gravitate into already to see footage that you have. So looking into the future, what might a paid ticket show look like in the dome that's using all of this kind of technology with the whale, like you mentioned, animation? What's what's possible, what kind of vision. You don't have to know how to do it right now, but what are some of the possibilities? And to sneak in a second, using parental prerogative, second related question is, I don't like anything Mark Zuckerberg stands for, but the metaverse, how does all this, since that's such a contemporary conversation, and it's of course not just Facebook, it's a broader looming thing, and I'm glad I'm too old to have to really deal with it. But what might a blue whale in the metaverse look like, or a killer orca, or the Noyo Center itself, and or the people of the Noyo Center working with the whale? I don't pretend to know, but that may relate to the first question a little bit. So just out of the box, just you don't need to worry about budget or anything like that, but what kind of things might an entity like Noyo look at to really raise the bar on all this, or leverage this forward? Matt, you're on.
I know. I have 3 tentacles now. Well, one idea that did come to mind was actually, I put crudely in the chat, thinking of like a fly through as sort of a different way to tour either perhaps not the orca skeleton because it's right there, but the blue whale, going back to what I mentioned in the talk about sort of anatomy and musculature, things like that. Not the most creative, but I feel like if done right, just sort of having sort of a layered program, I guess, with the skeleton as a basis would seem like a very interesting way to do it. Perhaps even have audience involvement, have sort of the...
I was wondering, like, does the technology allow for, let's call it a joystick, where where an audience member could control the angle of view?
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, have like interaction with having the audience sort of pick where they want to go. Yeah. I mean, on the surface, it sounds doable because 3D modeling software has to do that, right? So I guess it's just a question of which software is easy to use, things like that. Of course, the musculature stuff is something completely different, but that is a start.
So my 2 cents on this is like, so that augmented reality piece is a logical next step for us in the center here, like to be able to put on the internal organs and the musculature and the skin, so people recognize what they've seen in life with what they're looking at. I think that's an obvious step that we're trying to build. But this whole digital platform it kind of unlocks endless potential. Like, we are actually seriously thinking about proposing a huge thing to Google. They have this big grant round that is like creating we're calling it something like the biggest marine science center in the world, and it's basically like doing what you're talking about, Evan, where you're taking that digital jump, where you're instead of doing aquariums, you're doing these augmented and virtual reality things where people all over the world could come to the Noyo Center and
imagine like a blue whale conference, where you could bring the luminaries, and maybe Paul is one of them, bring the luminaries together from all corners and spend an hour or a day navigating around the skeleton and have conversations about it, and then do another one on the orca. And just, for example, that's actually kind of bounded. That's like an event. It's a it's a gathering, it's a conversation. There's huge amount of material there just with that one skeleton, without getting fancy, like different people could drive, and navigate around and maybe make presentations or speculate. Yeah,
We're
interesting.
getting a lot closer to that component for the in-person experience in the center, but yeah, there's a whole bigger component. All right, so I'm gonna throw it over to Mary Jane, who had a question about working with Hopkins. We are not working with Hopkins right now on this, so connections and collaborations are always great. If you have somebody to, well, you wrote Jeremy's name in there, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll reach out to him.
Right. That would be great because I can see a lot of possibilities there. He's modeled a lot on the acceleration and torque and whatever involved in the swimming dynamics when they're, especially blue whales are approaching a patch of krill or whatever. So I really think there could be a lot of mutual benefit going on there.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And I also want to say I appreciate your use of the term community science rather than citizen science.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to move over to. We agree the same, and that is exactly what we've done. And I think it's so much better descriptive of what we've done here that I appreciate you pointing that out. We're really trying to move our narrative over to community science.
I like the Burning Man proposal, Annette. That's
I'm very serious about that. I mean, it would be just amazing to, especially if it's 3D and light generated from lasers and whatnot coming down, no props, just the lights, just the, people would love it. It would be amazing.
AR at its finest.
Suggesting going to Burning Man and projecting the whale onto the desert.
All right, Sarah, we open it up to you. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just sort of following along with what we're kind of presenting here from Fort Bragg and what we're sharing with community science and beyond, and the technology of sharing like the depth or the deep or the size of a blue whale, like swimming through an artery, is actually something that a small child could do. And so getting those visual, there's so much about a blue whale and the deep ocean and these different things that are so difficult to really wrap your brain around in 2D on a flat screen or whatever, but bringing this all in and getting better understanding. I saw kind of a movie years ago, Ocean Odyssey, which brought us through a sperm whale into the depths of the ocean and brought forward oceanography in a way that I'd never seen it before. And it really made me click. And so it's just a way to further understand these areas that we cannot in the new dimension, which I find just mind-boggling. And I don't know if Kranz is here, but through Kranz and Nathaniel and Sheila, like getting out of that box and exploring these new technologies has just been mind-boggling to me and to all of us. So thank you. Really, really wonderful concepts.
So for those of you unfamiliar with the Noyo Center and what we're planning to do, we are going to undertake a significant design process this next year for our Marine Science Center on the Fort Bragg Headlands this next year. And part of that is exhibit design, both the dome and the blue whale. And so we are currently right now using these models that Nat's talking about to do exactly what we're talking about, where we're actually creating more of a better, even deeper model that we can use in the building, but also use before we even have the building. So that project we estimate will be probably $500,000 to restore and articulate that skeleton. So we have a considerable amount of fundraising to do. So always looking at where the next buck is going to come from. These models are also really helpful to get people to connect with what you're talking about. You can talk about a 73-foot blue whale, but when you see the model with the little person next to it, I think it brings it a lot more to life for people as well. So getting people to connect on many different levels, funders being one of them, is also a significant thing. Okay, Evan, do you have another question, or did I not lower your hand? Do you have another question?
Yeah, just very short this time, just picking up on what Annette had said. Nat will have no shortage of thesis ideas and possibilities, but this bringing together the community science and economics, and to what you're just saying, Sheila, the need to make the case to funders, to the broader world, that there's an economic development aspect to this in addition to the scientific development. And you know, I could picture a thesis looking at a case study, a simulated, you know, in a sense, case study of Noyo Center in a lower income rural community like this. What might that look like, and what might the reverberations be, or the multiplier effects be? Sorry, I turned off the video of an adventure like this, you know, but having an economist look at it in addition to having marine scientists look at it, and that's probably a pretty exciting kind of analysis to do that would, you know, help in all kinds of angles.
Yeah, I'll be honest, you know, like the Noyo Center has utilized these technologies that are off the shelf technologies in gaming, the gaming world, because we don't have resources. And so, so, you know, I think if you were at a Stanford, you know, level institution, you might go right to the state of the art technologies. And what we've done, because we've had to out of necessity, is just find really creative ways to get to the same place using some of these lower end versions of high-end technology. So like when Idaho Virtualization Lab came and they did the skeleton in 2 weeks, that's slightly better technology than we were using. So what I think that we will continue to do is look for ways that we can give opportunities to students to use these cutting edge technologies in unique ways through our work. And that will unfold even more as we keep going. I mean, we didn't go into this with 100% intention to have an outcome like this. But like, for instance, the teeth of the killer whale, Nat talked about the fact that we replicated those. So we hired 5 interns to scan and replicate all of the 44 teeth. And partly that was to teach them about the technology. Part of it was to give them employment so they can, you know, have a little summer stipend. And part of it was, it's just a lot of work and we wanted help. But those teeth are one of the most valuable scientifically. So that was always going to go in the CAS research collection. And the options for how people do this in the past don't create nearly as nice a result. And so many times we've done these things and people have come and said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Why didn't we ever think about doing this? This is such a great product. And we've actually continued to reproduce those teeth and use them as fundraisers to help us fund the work that we do. So, I mean, that's just, and those teeth, the real teeth, have now aged this Orca, you know, and are in access for any researcher to use in the future. So now they're in collection and they're in a national database and can be used in many, many different ways. And we look forward to telling more of that story too as we go forward. Thank you, Nathaniel, not only for tonight, but for everything you bring to our organization. You are truly one of the shining stars in our community, and we appreciate it. Can't wait to hear how it goes in Canada when you give your talk. Make sure you come back and let us know.
It's actually a week from now.
Is it? So you're getting ready to go up there?
Yeah, I leave by Amtrak on Wednesday. So.
Awesome. Awesome. I can't wait to hear how it goes.
Oh, you'll do great, Nathaniel. Go there with pride and be excited about the next steps in your journey. I know you're going far, laddie. So lovely to see you.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.